Hello, my friends. It has been too long, and I apologize for that. This year has been absolutely nuts for me, as many of y'all know, but things are starting to slow down for me, which I'm very excited about because that means that I am going to be uploading more. I am taking the home inspection exam in February. I am through with my course. Thank you so much for everyone who contributed to the GoFundMe for that. That really helped me tremendously. So this is going to be my 5,000 subscriber special. And I really wanted to do something personal for this monumentous occasion for the channel. So I decided to share some personal stories with you relating to kind of mysterious stuff. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. The first story I want to talk about is something that happened to me around the age of 15. One evening, I went to bed and it was a fairly normal evening. Usually takes me a really long time to get to sleep. So I had just laid down, whatever, and I started hearing a voice in my left ear. It was a feminine voice, and it was kind of like a whisper in some gibberish language that I didn't understand. It sort of reminded me a little bit of like tongues, if y'all are familiar with the prayer language of tongues. It didn't strike me as quite the same thing, but it's the closest thing that I can relate it to. The voice was coming from my left-hand side, and it actually sounded like it was being whispered right into my left ear. So I sat up in bed and I looked around, I looked to my left, there was no one there. But I was still hearing this voice speaking very calmly, very slowly. And I had no idea what to make of it. The longer it went on, the voice began to change. It got louder, it got more rapid, and it got more frantic sounding. So I remember at one point I was trying to figure out if this voice was coming from my head or if I was actually hearing it. But later on, as it got louder, I was noticing actual pain, discomfort in my left ear because the voice had gotten so loud. Now, that might have been some sort of psychosomatic reaction, I'm not really sure. But either way, I had no idea what to make of it. While this was happening, the only explanation that I could think of that made any sense to me whatsoever was that this was some sort of spiritual manifestation, maybe some sort of demonic attack. I wasn't sure, and honestly, I still have no clue. However, I figured, well, just in case maybe this is something demonic, I might as well pray against it. So I just prayed something like, God, if this isn't from you, please take it away. And it immediately stopped. So the way that the experience ended, sure, I mean, it might sound reasonable to conclude that it was a demonic attack of some kind, but since that event, I've really questioned that, because my understanding of a demonic attack is that they tend to be a lot more poignant, a lot more purposeful. I couldn't figure out what the intent of the attack was, if you can call it that. I will admit that it was around the same period of my life that I experienced my first episode of sleep paralysis. However, I was sitting up for part of it. I was able to move, I was able to speak. So sleep paralysis doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Another possibility that people might bring up is this could be like the onset of something like schizophrenia. Well, I can see the rationale behind that. I've never had another experience quite like this again. I've never been diagnosed with any sort of disorder like schizophrenia that can cause any type of hallucination. So, again, that doesn't really seem to be a very good fit for what happened. To summarize this encounter, I have absolutely no idea how to explain what I experienced that evening, and I'm really curious to hear your possible explanations for whatever it was I experienced that night. Have you ever experienced anything similar? Have you ever heard a disembodied voice speaking to you in a language that you haven't heard or that you didn't understand? It's strange, and I am open to your thoughts. Be as frank in the comment section as you like. I'm still very curious as to exactly how to explain what I encountered that night. The second story I want to tell you about happened to me when I was, I think, around the age of 32. I'm 39 now, just in case anyone's curious. So this was about 7 years ago or so. I have to set this up just a little bit. I knew 3 of my 4 grandparents. One of my grandparents died before I was born, and that was my father's father. His name was Thomas Lowell Jones, Tom Jones. He died in 1979. I was born in 1981. I regretted that I never knew him in life, and I truly believe that he actually did appear to me in a dream, and that I actually did get to meet him. One more thing before I get into the dream. My grandfather, he was an alcoholic and never got sober. He kind of had, I think, the reputation of having a short fuse. The way that he was described to me was that he wasn't really the happiest person in life. He drank a lot, smoked a lot, was very depressed a lot. So I tell you that because that was contrasted starkly in my dream. Here's the dream. It began in a car with him. I was in the passenger seat and he was driving. And I remember, looking over to him, and I immediately recognized him from, photographs that I've seen of him. But he was also different. It looked like him, but it looked like a much more peaceful, a much more relaxed, a much happier version of how he was described in life. He had this peace that was just emanating off of him, and this very subtle smile that almost seemed to say, I am complete. Everything is totally peachy and copacetic. There was this really, really strong sense of just absolute peace that was emanating from him, and joy and just happiness. He was driving somewhere, and I think I asked him where he was driving. And he said, I'm driving to work. By the way, he was the chief architect of Shell Oil Company way back in the day. I was just making small talk with him in the dream. Though I don't really remember the details of what we talked about while he was driving me to his place of work, there are 2 details that I vividly remember that I told my dad about, and it kind of blew him away because they were both verifiably true things that I did not know at the time that I had that dream. The first thing that I remember is the dream seemed, we seemed to be driving or commuting for a very long time, and at one point in the dream I asked him, how long does it usually take you to get to work? And he looked at me and he said, It takes about 57 minutes. So 57, that's like an oddly specific answer. I mean, it seems pretty random. The next thing that I remember, and this was actually my very last memory of the dream, because I think this is like where the dream ended. We were going over a body of water, and it was a fairly wide body of water over a bridge that was pretty high. And the dream sort of ended while we were driving on that bridge over water. Long bridge over water. Those were the two things that I remember, 57 minutes and that really long bridge. I told those two details to my father, and that kind of blew him away, because both of those things were true about his commute. It did take him about an hour to get to his office, and he did go over a pretty large bridge. I didn't know this at the time, but his office was in Manhattan, and they lived in Darien, Connecticut. So in that dream, I got the impression that it truly was him, and that he wanted to get to know me a little bit. And I think that was part of the reason why he came to me in a dream. And I think there was also a secondary reason. I got the impression, although he didn't point blank tell me to do this, but I got the impression that he wanted me to tell my father that he was happy and at peace and in a better place. So I did tell my dad that. So that was my, those are the two stories that I wanted to share. And I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments and your feedback. And let me know if you've ever experienced anything similar to this. Hey everyone, Drew here from Mad Cat Mysteries, and I hope you enjoyed the video you just watched. If you did, you can click on the subscribe button below. I'd appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.